Hey UConn Nation, it's KK Arnold here. If you're looking for the latest UConn women's basketball content, go subscribe to Listen Up to Phil and Ryan. Go Huskies!
Phil and Ryan on Listen Up, and Ryan, the UConn Huskies get a big win on the road. Final score 72-61. Great to be alongside with you and all the UConn Huskies family. Ryan, KK Arnold, the most impressive player on my watch list tonight. She had a huge play. I believe it came in the third quarter. Mind you, the game was nationally televised on Fox. She stepped up big on defense, and I think the biggest takeaway in this game that I had tonight, the defense, the turnaround for this defense. The defense continues to get better for this UConn Huskies team. They limited the big players for Creighton tonight. You mentioned in the last check-in, they had Mallory Brake coming in, Lauren Jensen, a big name, Morgan Malley. They did a lot of limitations tonight to these players. They held them in check. A lot of the times, Ryan, I was surprised by the fast pace that UConn had under the basket tonight. El Alfie had some great looks. She made some great shots. You had Sarah Strong, a double double tonight. I think that she's the X factor moving down the line. This is no surprise. We got the alert in the airport earlier in the year before we flew to UConn about how she's probably the freshman in the country to watch for, and she'll probably win freshman of the year, right? So, with that said, I think that it's very important when, of course, Paige Bueckers did Bueckers things. Never take that for granted. 22 points, but I really think Sarah Strong, if she continues to put on this performance like we saw tonight, Rye, yes, she's going to obviously carry this team as far as they can go. But yeah, I think that with the defense and then Sarah Strong tonight, really good look from UConn, and obviously the questions can die down now about, a little bit of concern about, is there any challenge in the Big East? I don't see it. So I think that check mark, even though the schedule's not complete, that check mark is pretty much in the books for me. And again, we can move on to what we look forward to the most in February.
Yeah, I think it was a fairly even game at the start. Both teams didn't shoot the ball that well to begin the game, but it was about halfway through the second quarter is when UConn kind of blew the game open, and Creighton didn't really get close ever since that moment. The Huskies ended the last 5 minutes of the half going on a 15-2 run. Sarah Strong, like you mentioned, dominating the game, ended with that huge double-double. Kaylin Chen had a good first half, but she did end the game 0 of 6 from three. And as far as the three-pointers, the whole team really struggled. UConn just 4 of 20. So sure they wanted to see a couple more of those go in. That kind of ended their hot streak from three from the past couple games. But the turnovers were the story of the day for the Blue Jays. They had 18 total, and the Huskies really capitalized on those in terms of scoring off of those turnovers. Paige Bueckers had a really good second half. She ended with 22 points. And I thought it was interesting that Jana El Alfie only saw 9 minutes today. Gino kind
Yeah,
of
and
went
while
with
you're on
the
topic, I want to cut you off very quickly. That was my mistake. She only had 1 point, so she was 0 for 2 from a field goal range. So I just wanted to correct myself there. I was thinking about Caitlin Chen rather, but go ahead and finish, and I'll mention Chen in a second.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Gino went with a guard heavier lineup today. So, I think we're gonna have to watch that, and I just wonder if that's gonna be more likely going forward. Especially in these tighter contested games. Perhaps Gino likes a guard heavier lineup more. Ice Brady didn't really play much today either, and Morgan Shelley didn't either. So kind of interesting to see the guard heavy lineup today against Creighton. So I think that's something to watch out for in the future, especially in the Tennessee and South Carolina games, to see if the lineup kind of stays similar. But yeah, I think this is a pretty big win for UConn. I know it's a kind of a ruckus crowd there in Creighton today. I think they had a record there for the Lady Blue Jays. So that was good to see, but I think overall a pretty good win for UConn today.
Yeah, shout out to the Creighton Blue Jays fan base. They showed up very well, Ryan. That's right. I did watch the game on Fox. I know you couldn't tune in, but CenturyLink Center, Omaha looks like the venue name, and that place was packed and it was loud. So shout out to the Blue Jays fans for showing up for their Creighton Blue Jays. Obviously, they knew what was on the line. It's not over for them, far from over. I'm sure they would get into March Madness, but fact of the matter is, I think we can pretty much know who still owns the Big East moving forward. Ryan, they mentioned, the announcers mentioned, I believe Gino commented, or the announcer said about how Caitlin Chen was always known for her being labeled as a scoring point guard. And that's exactly what you, pretty slow start, right? Some slower games here and there to start the season. But now you're starting to see, again, she had 9 points in this one, but she's also starting to heat up. I think that, again, we always mention about not how you start, how you finish. Man, I mean, if they can just make up for them two bad losses that they suffered earlier in the year, and mind you, the two big uh, games coming up in February, I mean, boy, oh boy, and then make a deep run in March like they're always, used to doing, like we're always accustomed seeing. Oh man, I mean, you're talking about all of a sudden eyes opening back up. Our eyes are open, but I want to see other people's eyes open around the country that don't necessarily like UConn that much, right, Ryan? Let's go over to comments and then we will get on into bid. I want to shout out to Daryl Anderson and then a new name, Pablo Enoch. He donated money to the channel along with Daryl Anderson, so we appreciate them a lot. Let's
Yeah,
go
thank
over
you.
to Daryl said, Phil is fine. It's tax season, so the quick response is a faster turnaround. Thank you for carrying and covering the UConn women's basketball team and unrivaled league, the next level, the WNBA, and the new contracts for the W and the final movement into the women Final Four. Ryan knew how sick I was. And when Ryan doesn't get a text message from me for about 2 days in a row, he definitely knows something is up.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely was a little weird, but yeah, glad you're feeling better. Glad you're back here with me. And yeah, I mean we're getting ramped up here, I would say, for definitely postseason basketball, March Madness. We're getting to the exciting times now.
Let's go over to one more. The Big East doesn't have really good or great teams, but you still have to play, and to win by 40, 50, and 60 points means something. Connecticut always going to be held at a high standard. But look at UCLA, look at LSU, who they play until now. Gino and his staff know exactly what they're doing. I mean, Ryan, again, Paige was great tonight, but you have to believe, I mean, if you didn't watch the game, look at the score, 72-61. Creighton did a heck of a job just coming that close.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously Creighton probably the best team besides UConn in the Big East, and like I said during the last check-in, some of these teams like Villanova, Seton Hall aren't really pushover teams. So obviously UConn doesn't really have a choice of whether they want to play their in-conference opponents or not. But I do agree, when they win some of these games by 30, almost 40 points. It doesn't really matter who you're playing. I think that's pretty impressive no matter what. And, of course, like you just said with that comment, UConn's always held to such a high standard. And I think a lot of people overlook some of these games. And, well, you say UConn won by 35 points again, but, they make it look easy. It's really not that easy to do it night to night.
Bob Fogel said, couldn't care less if Phil returns. He is not all addictive uh, to your analysis. He seems marginally invested. Addictive. Addictive? Ryan, well, let me tell him this. Bob Fogel, a message for you. Let's see who's heavily invested when it comes down to season ending losses, because that's when we all get tested, Ryan. So remember, I said that. Let's go over one more. Mark Hathaway said it will be interesting to see if their offense can still score well. Of the things said about Creighton, that's the most common, that they have a good defense. Defense, I just spoke about that, Ryan.
Yeah, the defense definitely showed up tonight, and like we always say, that's the one thing that stays consistent, every year, including this year for UConn, that the defense is always there. And for players like Caitlin Chen, you mentioned how she's heated up really the past 3 games now. So, the offense is always going to come, even if it's slow one night, the defense is always there to back the Huskies up. And they definitely, that was a big part of today's win, definitely capitalizing on all those turnovers that they forced. But, the offense is always going to show up, sooner rather than later.
All right, Huskies approved. Ryan 19-2. Creighton Blue Jays 16-4. Final score 72-61. And I will see you back here for the last check in for the next game. Phil and Rye on Listen Up.